Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. Two Geeks Talking is an entertainment industry interview show where we interview the creative people from the comic, film, TV, movie, and video game industries. And of course, I'm your host, Kurt Sasso. We are joined today by a very talented person. She is a latex model. She is a cosplayer. She is a host of Latex Fashion TV, if I recall correctly.
Yeah,
All right, good stuff. We are joined today by the talented Psycatt. How are you doing today,
I'm
Psycatt?
good, thank you.
I've interviewed a lot of people in the past. I've interviewed cosplayers in the past, from Ivan Tannenbaum to Jessica Negri and a few others
Mhm.
as well in the past. What made you get into modeling?
What made me get into modeling? I was quite young when I got into it. I think at the time I was dealing with quite a lot of bullying at school, a lot of like quite negative things, and it was just at the time that the internet kind of came about, and I'd made like a MySpace page, and I made a profile on Model Mayhem, and suddenly I was getting approached by photographers, by really creative people. I got to work with quite some really interesting people who enjoyed storytelling through photography, and that seemed like a really cool thing. So it kind of brought me away from the situation that I was in at the time into actually doing something creative and feeling good about myself. Because obviously, I was getting bullied mainly about my race. I'm a mixed race, so Asian and English. So my family's from Macau and Thailand and from Northern England.
Mhm.
So at the time I was growing up in Portugal, and they were quite racist. So it was just a nice way to feel good about myself and feel like, you know what, actually my looks might not be very conventional, but I can make good pictures. I can do something artistic with it. I don't have to be sort of what people in my school were saying that I was. I didn't have to be this like sort of freak that was like mixed race and a bit weird, a bit geeky. And I could be something else, something more. So that's what made me get into modeling initially. And then I kind of stayed because I've always enjoyed it as a hobby, as a form of telling stories and being creative with my image. And I mean, recently I've gotten more into fashion, particularly latex fashion. And I think it's just like a great way to kind of deal with image and be a part of a canvas, be a part of something greater.
Through this modeling, though, have you been able to artistically tell your own story, or are you relying on photographers and their story?
I think it always works as a team. So with some people, they know what they want, they know how they're going to achieve it, and they just need you to sort of be a part of it and play a role. With other people, it's very much a creative thing where everyone brings a little bit into the photograph. I mean, obviously with cosplay, I get to decide everything that I want to do. Whenever I do a cosplay, it's always, this is what I want to do. I like this character. I identify with it. I think it'll be really fun um, to play it and to make this work. So I'm going to do this. So it's really fun because it gives me a lot of freedom to just do what I want. Obviously, when you're working as a team, you have to consider everyone's viewpoints and what everyone wants to do.
So, speaking of cosplay, though, I mean, you mentioned you were geeky in your early life, and I'm sure you're continuing that geekiness on, or
Yeah,
else,
yeah.
or else I wouldn't have you on the show. But
Yeah, of course. Naturally. Two geeks talking.
so let's start on in your early childhood. Was there a comic, or was there a manga,
To
or
anime, when I was very young. I think that's when it all kind of kicked off in the 90s.
Mhm.
So I started off watching like all these really cool Japanese shows, Sailor Moon, Rurouni Kenshin,
Mhm.
what else? Dragon Ball.
Oh
Like,
yes.
so I was watching all this stuff, and I found it was like just really cool. Just I love the way that they sort of drew the characters, the storylines. I love how I kind of identified with the characters quite a lot because there was always someone who kind of had everyone didn't really like them, and they kind of had to defeat this obstacle, and I just really identified with that. And later on, I got really into X-Men as well. They had the X-Men
Yeah.
cartoons while I was growing up, and I always really identified with them because they were all sort of freaks, but also each one of them had something to bring to the table, something greater than themselves. So it made me feel very like very understood. So it's really nice having those things to kind of grow up with, and obviously the artwork's great.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. You literally hit on every single when I first started watching anime, it was literally Sailor Moon and Dragon Ball when I first got started, and then the X-Men, Spider-Man,
Yeah,
Batman the animated series as well.
yeah. Yeah, I've always really loved those. I think then later on, obviously, Neon Genesis Evangelion, and then I got really into manga, which to this day I kind of prefer the manga to the live animation.
Was that?
Um, I mean, think of, for instance, Attack on Titan. You just get so much more information out of a manga, and how the artist actually wants to portray things. I think Attack on Titan is probably actually a bad example, because one of the very few that I actually think the animation is better than the manga.
Nice.
But part of it is because obviously they've put a lot of the information that's in the manga into the anime. They didn't really alter it. They didn't really shorten it. They didn't really change the story too much or the characters too much, from what I've seen so far. So I've really been enjoying the live action. But generally, I just find the manga has a lot more information in it than the animes do. And I quite like how deep a lot of writers go with their subjects.
Is there any manga that you can recommend to anyone that hasn't read it in a while, like myself? I mean, besides Attack on Titan, I've seen the show and I love it. It's incredible. But is there any others that you're like, this is something I'd like to recommend to someone who might be a little out there, but it's still really cool?
Oh God, I think in terms of manga, I haven't really been reading much at the minute. What I have been buying, however, is a lot of indie comic books.
Oh, yeah.
I've actually got one just on the shelf. Shall I bring it
Sure,
out?
please. Yeah.
So
Oh,
let me just get my headphones.
yeah, that's good.
So this is actually something I'm so excited about. The Harleen comics. By Stefan Sejic. So I love how he always takes a lot of care and attention with not just his cover art, but also the way he draws, the way he kind of lays out all the pages. It's always just this really beautiful sort of glossy shine. As you can see, they're quite big copies as well, so you're not going to get a tiny little book. You're getting something quite nice. But the reason why I would recommend Harleen is because he's taken an absolutely different take on the character that you normally see, and I quite like it because the idea is that you see her before she becomes Harley Quinn, and when she's still a psychiatrist, she's still going through things. So it's basically telling her story before she became Harley Quinn, and why that was, and it actually empowers her a lot as a character. There's a couple of references as well to Poison Ivy, which is quite nice. So I definitely recommend this series of comic books to anyone who wants to read them.
Yeah, I was looking at the through Amazon, actually, at the very first book there, and it looks incredible, and a beautiful artwork too. The writing is actually really
good,
top notch.
It's really funny as well. It's really funny. It's very deep, but also very funny. I love that he doesn't really take things too seriously. It's just serious enough, but also with quite a lot of humor added to it.
Let's get into the latex modeling side of things, because this is an area that I have no knowledge of, so I apologize in advance.
Okay.
As a latex model, is there misconceptions that you run into? Why do you think that is?
Not really. I think pretty girls online are always going to get idiots, horny idiots, who just think women are just available to for dirty talk, but really. That's not really the case 90% of the time. So far, I haven't really received any negative comments or anyone thinking anything that it's not. I mean, I love wearing latex. I think it's a great fabric. First of all, it's really shiny. It's tight. It always looks good. It feels really good. I mean, it can get a little bit sweaty. I'll give you that. But it's all in all, I think the exchange is quite like a nice ratio of pros and cons. So it's worth trying. Anyone who hasn't tried it, definitely try it out. It's really nice to wear. It's kind of like a second skin. It's really, really comfortable. And get latex helper to get you in them, because that is the tricky bit. So if you spray a little bit of that on yourself, it all slips on like a glove. But no, I'd say most people are very nice. A lot of people are very curious about it. I think part of the reason why I don't really get a lot of nasty comments is probably because it's become very mainstream. You know, Kim Kardashian's wearing it. You see it a lot on films. I mean, obviously Catwoman's a prime example of it.
Exactly.
So I think people always relate latex a bit to fantasy stuff, which is very nice.
Yeah, for sure. Also, just looking through your Instagram stories as well too. The German Fetish Ball was on last year. Was it on this year? No, that's right.
It's going to be on in September.
Oh, really?
So they've managed to change the dates. There's the one single weekend in September where it's going to be happening again. So I'm going to be going to that. I had an absolute blast last year. So I recommend it for anyone to go.
What is that? What is that like? Is it like your typical comic convention where everyone's mingling and enjoying the scenery, or is there more of a focus in it?
The German Fetish Ball, so it's about anything kinky. So it's a celebration of fetish and kinky people and sexual freedom, basically. So it wouldn't really be the kind of thing that you would go if you're a geek, but if you're into latex, that is the right place for you. I mean, I feel like a lot of geeky people tend to go because there's a high fantasy sort of self-expression. I find that a lot of people like coming in with like these really flamboyant outfits, dressed as devils, as like characters. I last year I saw this guy. He had this incredible latex Elvis outfit, and he just looked amazing. But it's just a nice way to kind of express yourself at a party and know that nobody's going to ruin your outfit, nobody's going to slag you off, and it's very nice. Everyone makes a big effort, and obviously the parties themselves are really great. There's always great music. There's obviously the fetish fair where you can buy a lot of clothing. If you're into anything from harnesses to leather to anything else, you can buy lots of stuff there. Little kitty ears. So there's a lot of indie retailers. It's really, really, really fun. It's definitely one of my favorite parties in all of Europe.
Have you been going to this long?
Last year was the first time.
Awesome. I've been looking at a lot of photographers that have linked to Europe, have used you as a model, etc. And there's some amazing photographers. Who are some of your favorite ones to work with?
I guess obviously Latex Fashion TV.
Yes.
They're always so lovely. I love Frankinsella.
Mm-hmm.
His work he's always so lovely, such a lovely person, and I mean, he just gets the shot so easily. We just get it so quickly. I mean, at one point I remember we were doing this mega shoot. We had about 3 hours. I think there was 4 models. We all had like 3 or 4 outfits each. So you know, you can imagine that how much work that would have been. And we got so many banging pictures out of that shoot. And, you know, he was just bashing them out. You know, your girl will just go there and he just gets the shot immediately. You don't have to work too hard or anything. He just gets it. And the work's just replicated. Actually, it's going to be out in a magazine soon, some of our work together. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Nice.
So an Argentinian magazine has asked me to, a horror magazine. So that'll be quite cool. I love neon portraits, so I'm Chris C. He's so much fun to work with. He always works with neons. It's very creative, and it's always really, really high standard work. But it's always hard deciding on photographers, you know, because I love so many people. Blurred Edge is really great to work with as well. He does the more classy sort of portraits and, you know, the classy sort of gloves and that. But I feel bad if I don't mention anyone, you know, because I love everyone that I work with. I don't work with a lot of people. I'm very picky, so the ones I work with I tend to really, really like.
Awesome. Well, let's jump into the cosplay side of things and being a geek as you are. The major comic convention is MCM
Comic Con.
Comic Con in London. I have a couple of artists I've talked to from London in the past there. What's that convention like?
It's really big. I mean, you can get lost in there. It's just such a huge convention. I remember I was trying to look for my fellow cosplayer Purple Muffins, and she kept saying, well, we're on aisle C. So we go over to aisle C, and turns out there's about 4 aisle Cs. And we're like, Christ, okay, so which one of the aisle Cs? Is it C1, C2, C? You know, and we ended up like just having to try and meet somewhere by the front door. There's also several entrances, so that was a pain too. But we eventually got there. But it's such a fun convention. I think everyone's very kind of free-spirited. Everyone's in a good mood. There's always loads of people taking pictures outside, loads of creatives. This year they had a really cool photo booth, so they had like a Rick and Morty one, but
nice.
the queue was so big to get into it, I didn't even bother. I went to the to the girly ones, and we did some pictures there. It was really fun.
And you was that the one where you dressed up as
Finn, yeah,
Finn?
Fiona and Cake.
Right.
Actually, I think you can find some pictures of me and Purple Muffins
Yeah.
right next to Pickle Rick. They had like this gigantic Pickle Rick, so we just took some pictures there.
Yeah, I saw those.
In celebration of our Rick and Morty love.
As a fellow interviewer, then, do you find it easy or hard to interview people in the industry?
I find it very easy. I guess for me, it's kind of natural. I just talk to people quite naturally, so I don't really find it intimidating talking to people. And sometimes I enjoy getting to know more about people. So it's really fascinating. Sometimes they start talking, and I'll even come up with questions that aren't really scripted, because I just want to find out more about them, and then go back to your script.
Yeah, I've threw out the script a long time ago. It feels easier sometimes just to go off the cuff.
But no, it's really, really fun interviewing people. I think I've been very fortunate to do mostly latex models, obviously, with Latex Fashion TV, or anyone who's wearing latex at events. But I found it's been a really great way to also get to know people, and it's made me a better conversationalist, really, doing interviews.
Have you had any difficult interviews, or have you had any issues where it comes to where you're not quite on your game at the time?
I've had that once. I was doing a book interview, and I didn't really memorize my questions so well, and I didn't really know his work super well. So I kind of struggled a little bit. I kind of had to, look down at my little paper and look up and, and ask questions and stuff. So hopefully it's been edited well.
When did you transition from fashion to latex? Was that just something that just kind of came along?
For me, I just started modeling with, your typical alternative shoots and, creative things. It's only recently that I've actually gotten into fashion and into latex fashion in particularly. It's been quite a strange transition, because obviously with the creative modeling, you get to do a lot of expressions, there's a lot of body language, and in fashion modeling, it's all about the outfits. So you're there to display the outfits and showcase it. So there's not a lot of room for personal expression, or a lot of like body language or crazy expressions or anything, because obviously you don't want to distract from like the fashion, the clothes. But it's been like quite a nice journey. I've enjoyed it. Even with the restriction, it's nice seeing it as a challenge, and how I can best express myself with, with all these kind of like rules and limitations. So it's quite nice.
Everyone has one person that kind of inspired them on their path to where they are today. Who was that for you?
Oh God, I think I've had so many people inspire me. I think, I'm gonna say my dad, and this is so lame, but it's definitely my dad, because he has always been sort of the kind of person who he just saw what he wanted and he just achieved it, and he was never the kind of person to kind of lay back and just take what life gave him. He's always worked so hard to get where he wanted, and to be professional and to do his best. So I've always really looked up to him and to those things in life. So I guess when I started out, I didn't really have a lot of idols. I had a lot of people I admired, and I was like, right, okay, this is a great idea. That's a great idea. Maybe I can infuse all of this into my own style and take my own take on it. But I've never really had that thing to imitate somebody else. I've just always kind of wanted to be my own person, just do the ideas that were in my head and see how far I could go with it.
Looking at your career so far, you're a successful model, you're a successful interviewer, you've done wonderful things in your career, and you're going to continue to do wonderful things in your career, and you're professionally successful that way. Do you consider yourself personally successful?
As a person, yeah, I guess I do. I'm quite a spiritual person, really. I know I'm into latex and I'm into, lipstick and all that stuff, but and generally people look at you and think you're a bit of a bimbo, but really I've done a lot of introspection. I've done a lot of self-work. I lived in Asia for quite a while, so I took the time to go to a lot of temples to really nurture my soul, to really find out and figure out who I'm about, what I want to be. And And so as a person, I feel like I'm doing quite well. I mean, I obviously have my ups and downs, as we all do. I suffer from anxiety and have bouts of depression, and like really bad mood swings and things. But I think all in all, I always try and be positive and think, right, okay, so there's these things that I'm not happy about within myself. First of all, is it something that I can change, or is it something that I really can't change? Second of all, does it affect my life badly enough that I want to change it? And I kind of go from there. So you look at your weaknesses, and if you conquer them, you just become a stronger person, a better you. So it's really the best way to go, isn't it? So yeah, I am as proud as I can be. I feel like there's always going to be that bit of me that always wants to do more and be better. But I don't think that's a bad thing.
Personal growth, it's always a good thing for sure. Then on the reverse side of that, how do you deal with your failures?
Oh God, I am so harsh on myself. I'm really, really hard on myself if I do things wrong. Thing is, I'll beat myself up for a bit, and then I'll take the lesson and sort of move on from it and think, right, okay, there's something to learn from here. Let's not do this again. I think I really need to work on that little inner voice that's a bit kinder. So speak to myself the way I would to a friend.
The younger generation, they're looking at you as an inspirational person because, you know, you're very talented, you're successful, you're going for your goals, and they're becoming inspired themselves. How can they inspire the generation that follows them?
I think, I don't know. It's that's such a hard question to answer. I think the way forward, and the way that the world should go, is really to be a bit kinder to each other, be a bit more selfless, be nicer to each other. And obviously, I think you all should just, we all of us should really give our best. You're always going to be inspired by people who have pushed themselves into achieving great things, whether that's a philanthropist or a pop star or a doctor. You always admire the best in the business. So I think this is the only way really to inspire people, is to really just keep giving your best, being the best version of yourself, and create a better world and a better you, a better life.
I like it. Good question. Good answer, I should say. Where can we find you social media wise and websites?
Yeah, so you can find me essentially anywhere as Psycatt. So that's Psycatt and then underscore. I think the only place it's not with Psycatt written that way is Facebook, because it wouldn't let me put an underscore. So I think it's Psycatt Model. But everywhere else that you kind of can catch me that way. I'm going to be making a YouTube channel soon as well, so that will probably be the same.
Awesome.
You'll be able to find me there. But for now, I think that's it.
Good stuff. All right. Well, I hate to say it, but that ends this particular interview of Two Geeks Talking. You know, Psycatt, I just want to thank you so much for coming on the show. It's a real pleasure. Thanks for opening our eyes to a world that I definitely didn't know about, and I'm sure those that are interested in it have a brief taste of it too.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been so great having a bit of a chat with you and being part of Two Geeks Talking.
As you know, look for Psycatt and all of her social media, as she mentioned before. We'll have the proper links as well. She has a great presence, a great page, and a great personality, as you saw here today. Please like and follow her on whatever she does. This interview then can be found on youtube.com/TGT Media. You can also find all of my social media at Kurt Sasso. And you can find this and thousands of other interviews over the past 12 years on, of course, YouTube and tgtmedia.com as well. Thanks for listening and watching. Tune in next week for another great interview with whoever we have on, because they're creative, and if I'm interviewing them, then they're awesome as well. So talk to you later, and thanks all for watching and listening.